On today's episode, I talk with Jay Levy about gut instincts, going from 0 to 1, and how he loves to help the underdogs win. I'm Julie B., and they don't teach this in business school. Hey there, I'm Julie B., and you're listening to They Don't Teach This in Business School, a podcast where we discuss business ownership lessons that are learned through experience, not in a classroom or seminar. On today's show, I am interviewing founder and partner of Zelkova Ventures, Jay Levy. Some of his investments have included Clout, Superhuman, Reportive, Health Scout, and Alloy. That is quite a portfolio of investments. And those are mostly software companies. And I know that we are just going to have a great conversation today and really learn some lessons from him from his own leadership journey. So Jay, welcome to the show. I'm so glad to have you here, and thanks for being on the show today.
Thanks for having me. Looking forward to a great conversation.
Yeah, Jay, why don't we just start it off with you telling us about your business and what your role is in the business?
Yeah. So I am the co-founder and managing partner at Zelkova Ventures. We're an early stage software fund. So we started about 15 years ago. We saw a need about 15 years ago in New York for early stage money. What we had seen was the venture funds that were in New York at the time um, were applying the same rigor to a $500,000 check as they would apply to a $5 million investment. And companies at different stages have different needs and different um, availability of diligence materials and different KPIs and
Yeah.
results. So we saw a real opportunity. So now, 15 years later, we're now actually based in Miami, and we focus on early stage B2B software companies. So I really like to invest and work with companies that help companies do business better. So think about tools for small, mid-sized enterprise companies that can help them sell more, reduce expense, be more efficient, market better, communicate better, do things better for their customers and ultimately their business. We've invested in over 100 companies. We typically invest early and follow on. So we want to be part of the first or second round of funding. A lot of our companies will go through different incubator programs,
Mm-hmm.
which we work closely with. And we tend to be with the companies for the life of them. So we've got some companies that are 13, 14 years old in the portfolio
Wow.
still.
And that's not what you typically think of when you think of investors or venture capitalists or, even, early stage funding, because usually they're all about like making the fastest return on investment as quickly as possible. And then they, get in and get out. And the fact that you stick with your companies for that long, that's really, that's a different model than I'm used to hearing about for sure.
Yeah, I'm looking to the right because I'm looking at a text I sent to a friend last night where I said, um, everything happens overnight, but everyone forgets about all the sleepless nights for the years ahead of it. Um,
Yeah.
so business takes time,
Mm-hmm.
right? We read about and hear about the kind of overnight success, but that's the anomaly, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing that gets the headlines and gets the interest.
Mm-hmm.
But building companies is difficult. It's an emotional roller coaster. There's ups and there's downs. There's going to be good days, great days, and horrible days. And it's about learning how to manage those days and keep focus, especially for a startup.
So Jay, what is your favorite part of being a business owner? What just lights you up in the morning, and your favorite part of doing the work that you do?
Yeah, so I like to build. Even as a kid, I love playing with Legos and erector sets, and I think that's really still part of my DNA. So for me, it's the excitement of being able to work with great people on great ideas that excite me. I'm very fortunate that I can pick and choose who I typically work with
Mm-hmm.
and the ideas and the business they're building. So it's the idea of getting something from 0 to 1 that really gets me going. It's getting excited. Once, to be honest, once companies are fully scaled, fully operational, to me, it's a little less interesting
Mm-hmm.
than when it's really like, how do you build from this like fragile idea into something big? Um, so I'm super fortunate. You know, I mean, other things, great about being an entrepreneur and a business owner is um, you get some flexibility,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like life is a whiteboard. You are the sole person who needs to take responsibility for your success and your failure, right?
Mm.
If you're the head person of the company, it's on you to really drive the bus and to navigate the bus, but really surround yourself with great people, and that's incredibly underestimated. I think is the value of people, um, to a lot of businesses.
Yeah, so how do you surround yourself with great people? Like staffing is so hard right now, and a lot of my own friends and even in my own world, people are resigning for one reason or another. And how do you make sure that you surround yourself with great people and
Yeah,
honestly keep that talent pool open and flowing?
right. So there's a few parts if you unpack that.
Hmm.
It's one is how do you bring them on, right?
Right.
How do you hire, and how do you partner? I think, um, being a founder, being a CEO, being a business owner, um, you need some charisma, right? You need to attract talent. Um, hate to say it, you need to be popular in some
Yeah.
respects, right?
Hmm.
Like you've got to attract these people, and part of it is like, can you sell them on your vision? Do you believe on your vision? Believe in
Hmm.
your vision? Does that come across in not just your pitch, hypothetically, if you're looking for investors or lenders,
Hmm.
but employees, right? Um, and if it's not, taking a step back to really understand why it's not, right?
Hmm.
What's interesting is we don't ask for feedback enough,
Yeah.
as people, right? So I think really learning and evolving and iterating your messaging. Recruiting is not something I love doing by any means. And so what do I do is I surround myself with people who like to recruit,
Hmm.
right? Who can help me in the process, right? Whereas there are other people who love recruiting. Great, go for it. So I think identifying your skill set, right, and bringing people around you, and having a compelling message, and vision and opportunity, right? Like that's a big thing. I hear founders say to us all the time, "I wish so and so had the dedication that I have," or
Wow.
"I wish they had the working 90-hour weeks," which is a whole nother discussion that I have. And these are founders that may own 50, 60, 70, 80% of their company still. And they're talking about employees that might own 1/4 of 1%. I said, if you want them to have the same passion, the same drive, the same focus that you do, give them 80% of the company, right?
Yeah.
Like, you got to realize like you are incented because this is your baby, right? And that's the other big thing that I think is critically important, is showing your passion for the business and bringing people on that have passion for the mission. um, Once you have passion, it'll no longer feel like a job or a chore,
Hmm.
because you'll see the bigger purpose. And that then I think translates into how do you keep them? Is show them the passion,
Hmm.
right? Show them that they're valued, show them that there's a future, that there's excitement, that it's not getting stale. um, and people are going to stick around. I think it's getting very hard in this remote environment, to keep employees, unfortunately. And I'm not. I'll say it. I'm not a fan of the remote environment
Hmm.
for early stage companies.
Hmm.
You used to be able to tell when an employee was about to leave. They'd come into the office, maybe dressed a little bit differently, hey, got a haircut. All of a sudden they're taking an hour and a half lunch. You could. There were telltale signs. It's nearly impossible over Zoom and in this remote environment. I also think, the water cooler conversation builds camaraderie, bonds, right?
Hmm.
Um, I've always heard people tend to leave bosses, not companies. Well,
Hmm.
if the bosses and the people are now distributed, what's the glue that's holding people together? It's become financial only. When I was younger and was at Morgan Stanley, we used to go for drinks every Thursday night with my team members. That
Yeah.
really, when I ultimately left Morgan, it was a very difficult decision because of the people I was working with. So I think we need to really understand the pros and the cons of this remote environment and the impact it's going to have on hiring, growing, and scaling.
Absolutely. That's really well put. I think the remote environment, it's changed the game for so many businesses because it's so hard to it's really hard to kind of get a feel for what's going on with your staff's life if you're not seeing them every single day or
Yeah.
most days of the week. If you're not at least seeing them even one day a week, would be probably better than all virtual. So I totally hear that.
So if I could tell one
Yeah.
story on
Uh-huh.
that, we have a company in the portfolio that we've invested in probably 10, 11 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And so way before the pandemic, way before remote was very in vogue. And the founder there decided a decade ago to embrace remote. And it was a little bit of an uphill battle because the jury was still out, as it still is. Um, and the company has been incredibly successful. But he will tell you that the remote aspect of the business has cost them more money than having office space will, has caused him more agita, but they pulled it off. And on the economic side is, his view is twice a year, every employee has to get together in one place for 2 weeks. Think about the cost associated with that. He's like, yeah, it'd be much cheaper to take an office in New York or Florida or Boston, wherever it might be. And he's like, it's stressful because he's also on a plane
Mm-hmm.
nonstop because he wants to go meeting with employees. His rationale for it was he felt he could hire better than the market he was in, which was probably correct.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it was not the cheaper, easier route by any means. And I think founders need to accept that remote can succeed, but it takes more work than getting everyone into a conference room together in the same
Yeah.
office.
Every decision you make as a business owner has a plus and a minus. Every single one. I feel like even the decisions that seem like no-brainer home run decisions, there's a cost even those, which I think is, really that's a good illustration in terms of the world in which we work. Hey, this is Julie B, and you're listening to They Don't Teach This in Business School. I'm here today with Jay Levy, and we're just talking about business ownership and lessons we've learned. And Jay, I want to switch gears here a little bit and ask you about your biggest wins as a business owner. Can you share some of those?
Yeah. So ultimately, I'm not gonna lie. It's financial, right?
Mm-hmm.
We invest in companies to generate returns for ourselves and our investors, right? So we've had over 30 successful exits that range from 2 to 3 times our money to over 99 times our money. So there's been some big ones in there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, for us, if we kind of take away, okay, like don't just view success as financial success, but what are the other areas that I am proud of our successes
Mm-hmm.
is when we really have invested in founders who may have been viewed as the underdogs, may have been viewed as not being the right fit,
Mm-hmm.
and they've succeeded. You know, for me, entrepreneurism is in my DNA. I grew up around it. I grew up around the small business, the underdog. Um, so that's what we invest in. So for the other part of success, not just the 99 times our money and the financial reward is when we are investing in businesses that help other businesses make money, right? I
Mm-hmm.
mean, there's Help Scout, you had mentioned. I mean, we've got tens of thousands of small to mid-sized businesses that use us every day to service their customers. I mean, talk about the network effects of a business like that, and we're helping people all across the world do business better. Other companies, MarketMuse, a great example,
Mm-hmm.
content marketing platform that helps companies market online, write better content. Obviously, that's really hot right now with
Yeah.
everything going on with ChatGPT
Oh yeah.
and the latest news on AI. But giving businesses the ability to help them, help employ, help put food on the table. So
Mm-hmm.
we've got the success of the financial, but I can't ignore the success of helping to create jobs, helping to build founders' dreams, and create wealth and freedom for our founders, their teams, and thousands of employees across the portfolio over the years.
Yeah, and that's a really great example of, having multiple definitions of success. I think that's really important. I'm teaching a class to brand spanking new entrepreneurs right now at a local community college. And last night we actually talked about cash flow. And it was kind of the deep dive into financial statements for them. And of course, cash is king. That's something, and it's very true. Like, you need to make sure you have access to cash or capital, however you get that in a smart way. But I had to constantly remind them that their personal self-worth is not based on, how much money they have in the bank account. And that's just a line that you have to kind of constantly navigate, because if you don't have good boundaries around that, it's really easy to either have a really big ego or feel like you're just failing because of just the nature of how cash flow is in a small business.
Yeah, I mean, we see in tech, in the startup world,
Mm-hmm.
the line is everyone's killing it and crushing it. And
Mm-hmm.
it's not true, right?
Mm-hmm.
This stuff is hard. Most companies won't succeed.
Yeah.
And even those that do succeed, um, the outcomes aren't what you see in the news.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the billion-dollar exits. I forget the stat, but it was something like of successful companies. So we've already taken a small pool, right? We,
Mm-hmm.
we know that unfortunately most companies don't succeed, but of successful companies, it's something like 97% had been selling for less than $50 million, which is a huge sum of money, $50
Yeah.
million. dollars.
Mm-hmm.
But in the venture world, it's not, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you've got companies raising 10, 20, 30, $40 million, right? And the vast majority of outcomes are less than 50, which means if you break that up, probably the vast majority of outcomes are less than 20 of
Mm-hmm.
that set. Um, but there is this, imposter syndrome, you can call it, these challenges that
Mm-hmm.
founders and business owners encompass, because we we don't want to be vulnerable, right? We don't want to show our hand. We don't want to open up, especially founders that might have boards and investors,
Mm-hmm.
because they fear that's going to lose. Their investors are going to lose confidence in them. Their employees are going to lose confidence in them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so we have a big challenge for founders, and a lot of founders suffer from significant anxiety, depression,
Mm-hmm.
fear, loneliness.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big one. We see that across our portfolio. And, I know I'm succeeding, kind of getting back to the
Yeah.
define success question.
Yeah.
When I've got founders texting me for help at 9, 10 o'clock at night, and it's not just about, how do we hit this number? It's how do I help manage my employees? How do I help do this?
Yeah.
I'm struggling with this. When they really open up to me, that's another way I know um, that we're being successful at what we do, and really being there as a partner and coach for our companies.
Yeah. So, kind of on the flip side of that, Jay, what are some mistakes that you've made along the way that, if you could go back and change them, maybe you would? Just things that you've learned, some major lessons you've learned that you can share with the listeners.
I'm fortunate that I get to work with people I want to work with, and ideas I want to work with.
Mm-hmm.
The mistakes I've made is when I didn't go with my gut. And that's traditionally been, and instinct is real. Like, we
Mm-hmm.
have to value and realize that there's something to be said about instinct.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it's been when we've backed and invested in founders that I didn't feel had a similar approach or moral compass as we
Mm-hmm.
did, right? But like, some of these had financial success, right?
Mm-hmm.
But yet they were founders that maybe didn't approach relationships, didn't approach business with the same lens that I did, we do.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where it's been difficult, because there's then been this tension between
Mm-hmm.
us and the founders. I'm not the person who needs the final point, if you know what I mean. We all know those
Mm-hmm.
people who need the final dollar, who need the final point, who need to win, right? I
Yeah.
believe in life, both parties should win, right? And very few things are a zero-sum game. Maybe buying a car is a zero-sum game, maybe
Mm-hmm.
buying a house is a zero-sum game, but most business is not. It's a relationship business. And in order I think, win in relationship businesses, everyone needs to feel like they're winning.
Mm-hmm.
So for us, my failures have been when I went against my gut and done things that I saw greed,
Mm-hmm.
or I focused on the financial success and not the bigger picture.
Yeah.
Which is challenging today, because there are companies that, when I've been asked this question from our investors, the answer they typically say is, well, X company that we lost $500,000 in, or whatever it might be. And when I say, no, this company that we actually succeeded in, I regret doing because it was a tough relationship with the founder because we didn't have the same moral views and lenses. They're
Hmm.
surprised to hear, but for me, we're in such a people business, we got to focus on that.
That's a really interesting concept. I mean, trust in your gut is that's something that that instinct that you have, no matter how it comes across, how you feel it. I really do think that most entrepreneurs have it. And I have the same experience. Pretty much every single mistake I've made or thing that I wish that I would not have done, it's because I can look back and say I went against my gut instinct on that. Like I decided that I was going to go ahead and go forward with that idea or whatever it was because for whatever reason, but in my gut, I knew it was not the path that I should have taken. Um, and there's this, I've started noticing there's a school of thought about how there's content out there now. It's like, don't run your business based on your gut instinct. And I personally, I think that is, I mean, not, you shouldn't run your whole business based on gut instinct. That's true. But don't ignore it either. I'm kind of shocked to kind of see that out there in the world, and I don't know, I'm a little bit concerned about it. But anyways, that's another conversation.
Yeah, I think when your gut instinct goes against the data, you've got to start asking questions,
Mm,
right? So I think, shooting from the hip, running your business completely by gut instinct, definitely not the right path.
mm-hmm,
But it should be another checkbox or another
mm-hmm,
variable when you're analyzing things. Like, why am I feeling this? Let me unpack
mm-hmm.
this. Let me figure out what it
Yeah.
is that's giving this agita, for lack of better terms, when making those decisions.
Hey, you're listening to They Don't Teach This in Business School. I'm Julie B, and I'm here today with Jay Levy, and we're just having a great conversation about mistakes, wins, success, failure, all of the things, trusting your gut we just talked about. But Jay, you said something just a few minutes ago about how the founders of your companies will text you at 9, 10 o'clock at night for advice on things that aren't just about making money, and that was a definition of success for you. You mentioned that whole lonely at the top thing, and I'm really curious because you work with a lot of founders in your business. What do you see are some things that your founders do, or even that maybe that you do, that help kind of mitigate that lonely feeling?
Yeah. So one of the things that I'm super big on is when we have board meetings, which we do typically quarterly and check-ins in between that, is really working with the founders to ask them, how are you? And meaning it, right? We
Mm-hmm.
that's typically a throwaway question. You're
Mm-hmm.
walking down the street, you bump into someone, how are you? Do we really care about the answer?
Mm-hmm.
And do we give a truthful answer? Typically not,
Mm-hmm.
right? Unfortunately, that's just how the world works.
Yeah.
But so for us, it's really, stepping aside from the business for a
Mm-hmm.
second and really understanding how they are and reading body language,
Yeah.
which gets so hard over Zoom, right? Like we were talking about before.
Yeah.
Um, and um, also me understanding my place within the company, within the founder.
Mm-hmm.
I'm big about coaching. I think I actually just got back from a reboot retreat, which is the Reboot organization in Jerry Clona. They work with founders, they work with investors, and I think it's really important to take a step back
Mm-hmm.
and give yourself some space to think.
Mm-hmm.
Think about your business. Think about who your allies are within your company, and I really work with the founders to let them answer their own questions. I mean, that is really the core of it. Is unfortunately you can't tell someone what to do and expect them to do it in anything in life,
Mm-hmm.
right? Especially founders, right? Think about, like, if you're starting a business and you're an entrepreneur, you're going against the odds. It's
Mm-hmm.
by definition,
Yeah.
it's a little insane. It's a little crazy,
Just a little, yeah.
right? And now you think they're going to listen. Like, typically they don't. But understanding that,
Yeah.
right? And coaching is all about understanding that the person possesses the answer. How do you
Mm-hmm.
get them to realize the answer on their own
Yeah.
so they go on the path they already know? So we really focus on that. And I highly, highly, highly recommend any founder, any CEO, any business owner who's got employees, go invest some time, take some classes. You don't have to become a corporate coach.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a coach. I've never taken the exams. I've taken a bunch of the classes. Read the books, take the classes, and learn. Because at the end of the day, as founder, CEO, right,
Mm-hmm.
you should be the coach and not the players,
Yeah.
right? And you should hire players that are better than you around you, but really know how to work with them to make them and give them the space and the resources to excel.
I laugh when I think about, if I'm probably going to age myself here a little bit, but the Glenn Ross movie, the scene where
Yeah.
it's basically sell, 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 and always be closing. And I think about that in terms of always be coaching, because I feel like when you are a leader, every moment you have with your people is a coachable moment. Now sometimes obviously work just has to get done and it's a project focused, due dates, deadlines, all of that. But that I have kind of flipped that into my brain of always be coaching. And it sounds like you really strive to, one thing I think is important is to learn how to meet people where they are,
Yep.
and then walk with them. So it might mean that you're walking backwards on a path for a little bit, but finding where they are and then just having the rest of the walk with them is really important as a leader and in that coaching capacity for sure.
It, the visual I always get it is the conductor of an orchestra. So you go see an orchestra and you're like, does this conductor are they necessary?
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think as a founder, you want to and a CEO and a business owner, you want to make yourself unnecessary at some point, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where you can go away for a month and the business still continues. In fact, a lot of times we see when founders leave town, the business improves,
Yeah.
because the team feels like they have some ability to be more creative. They have more space. They can take risk.
Mm-hmm.
So I always say, like, you see the conductor, they're doing their thing, but you're always scratching your head. Are they really necessary? And the answer is, if you ask them, they're like probably 110%. But if you ask any of the band members, they're like, no, we don't need the conductor. Like, we can do this on our own. And that's the type of employees you got to bring in, and partners and co-founders to bring to the table.
Yeah. So Jay, I know we talked about success a little bit earlier on, but is there like a one or two item checklist that you define as successful beyond money? And are there anything that you can look at and say, I had a successful day, I had a successful week, anything like that you have in your world?
Yeah, for me, success personally looks like when I can support our founders in their goals, right, and be there for them.
Mm-hmm.
So nothing makes me more excited as that 9 p.m. text message.
Mm-hmm.
I prefer a 9 p.m. text message to a 7 a.m. text message, for the
There
record,
you go.
because I'm not a morning person. So I think for me, it's that.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's when I help our companies do things that they were having challenges with. I mean, we've been through a roller coaster in the past few years, and we're
Mm-hmm.
seeing, a very difficult funding environment. So in the past month now, I've been able to help two of our companies raise their next rounds of financing. And that's really rewarding when one of their first investors is helping to make intros,
Mm-hmm.
that gets them to the next level. So that's success. The things that I hate is the fact that 99% of the time we're saying no to
Yeah.
companies, right? We see 800 to 900 companies a year. We invest in 7 or 8 of them.
Mm.
Like, that's not fun,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that's the difficult part of the business. The fun part is when we get to say yes, right? And we get to wire that money and sign those documents and have the first board meetings and meet with the companies and sit in the product strategy. That's the fun stuff. The
Absolutely.
unfun stuff, unfortunately, for me, is the passing. But it's great to see founders with, vision, with burn, grit. I mean, grit is so important to
Mm-hmm.
business owners. So I'd say those are the two that are, for me, success based.
Well, as we're coming to the end of this conversation today, Jay, I just have one other question for you. If you were going to teach a class about being a business owner to future entrepreneurs, what is one thing you would really want them to learn in your class?
I think a lot of it, we talked about it.
Mm-hmm.
Focus on the people. Surround
Mm-hmm.
yourself with people that have different, better, more experience than you do. Don't be afraid of that. Too many business owners are afraid to bring on people that they use could be replace them, smarter them. So focus on the people,
Yeah.
right? Surround yourself with great people. And once you've done that, be a coach, right? Really invest in your people and giving them the tools to succeed. So I think if I had an off the cuff title of the course, it would be the people business, right?
Have you written a book yet? Because maybe that's your book.
I have not. I would probably need a dozen ghostwriters to write a book.
As somebody who's going through the process, it is a process. So I'll just say that and leave it there. Well, Jay, listen, I have so enjoyed this conversation. I just want to thank you for being here again with me today. I know the listeners are going to get a lot out of this interview for sure.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it and happy to come back whenever.
All right, and that is a wrap on this episode, but please subscribe to this podcast on your favorite podcasting app so that you don't miss out on future conversations. I'm Julie B, and they don't teach this in business school.